I didn't even get a simple, hello. No apology, no address by name. Just a cold line in the subject line, funds transferred. And in the body itself, a single sentence, quiet but sharp as a blade, I transferred your inheritance to my account. It will be better that way. And under this message, a photo. Blurry, made in a hurry, but all the more humiliating. She stood on the balcony, a glass of wine in her hand, her eyes shining in the golden light of the sunset. And next to her was a man, a stranger to me. With a beard that looked too thoughtful, the kind that covers up infidelity under a mask of wisdom. His hand lay on her shoulder with that self-confidence that only appears when a person has long felt like the master of the situation. And her smile, wide, light, defenseless. This is not a coincidence. It was a smile I hadn't seen since our early years. Not after we'd walked barefoot around the kitchen under tattered garlands. Not after we'd built dreams together and believed our plans were the only way forward. Not after I was seen as the future, not a backup, in her eyes. That night on the balcony, Claire didn't just look happy. She looked free. And the scariest thing wasn't the betrayal itself. The scariest thing was how openly she'd stopped pretending it wasn't there. I'm talking to you. Write in the comments where you're listening to this story. If your heart has ever been trampled by a smile, press like so I know I'm not alone. Subscribe, because when Claire finds out what I did in advance, her expression will change. And you won't want to miss this moment. Now let's go back to the night when everything finally cracked. I sat in my shirt after a business meeting, in our shared office. The same oak table we had argued about for weeks. The same shelves we had measured with our own hands. But this time the room was cold, dead. The only light was from the screen. It cast shadows on the walls where her certificates and my drawings had once hung side by side. Then it had looked like a balance. Now it was a lie. There had been no call from her, no text. No, we need to talk. Just silence and theft. And the worst part was that she hadn't stolen our money. She had stolen something that had never belonged to her. My second chance. My inheritance. A gift from Joanna. She wasn't just my aunt. She was my savior. When I was 15 and my parents were gone in an accident, Joanna had taken me in. A nurse with a haggard face and boundless kindness. She worked nights so I could study. She napped in her car between shifts. She filled out the FAFSA herself. She was more excited about my scholarship than I was. And when her illness took her, she left me a letter and a fund. The letter said just one thing: build something that will survive the pain. And with those words, $612,000. This money wasn't for vacations or luxuries. It was the foundation of my life. And Claire knew it. She was at the funeral. She held my hand. She nodded as I read the letter aloud. She even said, "Your aunt was incredible. You were lucky to have her." But to her, it wasn't an inheritance. It was an opportunity. My pain was like a loophole. My survival was like a sum on a spreadsheet that could be transferred without being noticed. I didn't scream. I didn't punch walls. I didn't call a lawyer. Not yet. I got up, went to the kitchen, and poured myself a glass of water. When your heart has been broken slowly and methodically over years, you don't panic. You start to prepare. I looked out at the yard we used to landscape together. She picked out the hydrangeas. I laid out the stone path. And then, standing there, I finally saw the truth, that every turn in our marriage had led only to her convenience, her ambition, her escape. She didn't even know that I could already sense the storm coming. I noticed her calls, which she took away from me. I heard a laugh that sounded like it belonged to another woman. I saw her ask about my bills not with concern but with cold precision. "We need to simplify," she said, her eyes never leaving her cup of tea. "All these passwords and logins are just a mess. And I heard the blade beneath those words. So I took action. 3 months before her letter, I was sitting in the Atlanta office of Rita Martinez, a lawyer with both backbone and conscience. She handed me coffee and quietly asked me if I had been sleeping lately. I answered without embellishment, my wife has become interested in the inheritance. And it is not concern, not love, it is a cold interest that eats away like rust. Rita Martinez tapped her pen twice on her notebook and said, "Your aunt knew what she was doing when she made the trust irrevocable. Even you can't just transfer that money. And she can't. And if she tries, we will record everything. Every entry, every application, every trace of it. Clean. Legal. With all the time stamps." I didn't warn Claire. Let her think she is the smartest. In a shared cloud folder called Ideas for Repairs, I found a hidden folder. Inside were screenshots of my bills, statements, spreadsheets with fine calculations. And a file with a name that cut into the eyes, Exit Strategy. Not a plan B. Not a just in case. But a clear escape plan. I made a copy, sent it to Rita, and kept quiet. As Claire prepared to leave for another retreat, she kissed me on the cheek, the way you greet a distant relative. "Longer this time," she said. "I need space." I smiled and said, "Take as many as you want." I helped load the suitcases into the Volvo and watched her drive away, hiding behind her glasses and the loud music. Then I went back into the house, opened the Evidence folder, and clicked on the first file. This betrayal wasn't about the heart. It was about money. And money always leaves traces. And I had every trace of it. They say betrayal doesn't come instantly. It creeps in like a cold in a room you've been sitting in for years. And then one morning you see steam coming out of your mouth. That's what happened to our marriage. I remember that Thursday when I realized, I'm not her husband anymore, I'm her replacement. I came home late from work. She had come from a health weekend. She smelled of eucalyptus and lemon oil. Her steps were so light that they seemed strange. "You're home," I said. She nodded. Just a nod. Not a word. I held a bottle of Malbec, her once favorite wine. 2 glasses were waiting. But she walked past and disappeared into the bathroom. And I stood there listening to the sound of the water, realizing that for the first time I wasn't even trying to follow her. I didn't ask how the retreat was. I didn't ask who she was with. Because I already knew, it wasn't about healing. It was about distance. The distance she cherished like a garden of her own. In the early years, she was a fire, a chaos that brought joy. She laughed mid-sentence, traced routes on a map with her fingers, invented adventures that seemed crazy but made me believe. I was an architect, she was a breathing instructor, and we seemed perfect in our imperfections. We met because of Joanna, who once said, "If you don't let the past breathe, it will suffocate your future." Back then, Claire looked at me as if I were something rare. We lay on the floor, drawing dreams on the ceiling. She wanted a wellness center, I wanted shelters. We were poor but happy. She meditated. I worked weekends. She lit candles. I delayed paying bills. And then love turned into logistics. Little cracks, she stopped asking how my day was. Stopped sharing tears. Stopped lighting candles. And then one day I quietly asked, "Is everything okay?" She gave me that tight, professional smile she usually saved for clients and said, "You have been so busy lately. I did not want to add more to your plate." And for a second, I almost believed her. But I knew the truth. She was not protecting my plate. She was already eating somewhere else. I am not telling you this for pity. Do not hit like if you think I am some kind of victim. This is not about sympathy. This is about patterns. If you have ever looked across a dinner table and realized the person next to you has already checked out, you know what I mean. You start noticing absences in their presence. Claire's phone began staying face down. She answered calls with, "Hey there," instead of, "Hi." She started saying, "I," instead of, "we." One night I asked half joking, "Do you still think about Asheville?" She blinked slow, and said, "Maybe someday. On my own." Those two words, "on my own," landed like a stone in my chest. I nodded like it was nothing, but inside it cracked something wide open. I did not give up right away. I booked us a cabin in the Blue Ridge Mountains. 3 days. No Wi-Fi. Just us. She came, but she never arrived. Her body was there, but her mind was somewhere else, checking her nails, scrolling in the bathroom, claiming headaches that never seemed to need Advil. On the last night, I built a fire. I poured wine. I put on that old Van Morrison record we used to dance to. I asked her, "Claire, are you still here with me?" She looked right at me and said, "I am trying. But I think we want different lives now. Not different things. Different lives. Different lives." That is not a crack in the wall. That is a demolition notice. So when her email arrived, I was not surprised. Not really. What shocked me was how casual she sounded, as if moving my inheritance into her private account was just another chore between a spa appointment and a massage. No shame. No hesitation. But here is what she never understood. Every move she made had already been recorded. Every login, every attempt, every digital fingerprint. Thanks to Rita, I had a paper trail long before Claire thought to hit transfer. Most people think betrayal hurts because of the big dramatic blow. But it is the quiet efficiency that cuts the deepest. The way someone rehearses your erasure while still kissing you good morning. The way they smile in family photos while building their exit behind the scenes. That kind of betrayal is not loud. It is meticulous. And I know some of you watching this, from Kansas, from Kentucky, from California, you are nodding right now. Because you have felt it too. That shift when a marriage stops being love and starts being theater. When you become a prop in your own home. For me, the email was not the moment. The real moment was when I no longer recognized the sound of her laugh. It belonged to someone else. But life does not stop. Rent is still due. Coffee still brews. The dog still needs a walk. So the morning after her email, I did all of that. Then I called Rita. Because pain is no excuse for passivity. And revenge done right, does not look like rage. It looks like order. And order was what I had been quietly building, piece by piece, while Claire thought I was too tired to notice. There is a moment in every con when the con artist thinks they have won. I know that look. Relaxed shoulders. A crooked smile. A false victory dancing in their eyes. Claire hit that moment 3 days after her email. She came back from her retreat with a tan, a silk scarf, and a playful tone, like nothing had happened. She poured herself almond milk, mentioned her financial wellness coach, and floated around the kitchen in her linen pants. That is when I knew, she still had no idea what I had done. 2 months before, I had already moved the inheritance into a living trust under my name only. Legally separate. Untouchable. Claire thought she had pulled up treasure. But all she had done was yank the curtain down on herself. That morning, I sat across from her at breakfast. And I knew, the performance had only just begun. She was on her iPad, scrolling through Zillow like she was already living a different life. Costa Rica, she sighed. She was right. I had said that. But never with her. She didn't notice I hadn't responded. She didn't look up once. And that's when it hit me, when someone is planning your future without your voice in it, they're not building with you. They're rehearsing their life without you. They're soften. Later that day, I went to the garage. Beneath a dusty drop cloth was the old chest Joanna had left me, the one holding her nurse's pin, her handwritten letters, and a single sealed envelope from her will. Inside was one line, written in her looping hand. Use tea. I kept that note. Read it every time I felt the temptation to rage, to shout, to demand justice the way movies teach us. But real revenge isn't cinematic. It isn't loud. It's quiet. 2 weeks later, an email came. Not from Claire. From her lawyer. A preliminary proposal for the division of assets. Full ownership of our condo. A cut of my pension. And a lump sum from what she referred to as our inheritance. I read it twice. Then I poured myself a glass of water, not wine, because clarity matters more than comfort. And I drafted my reply. But not to her. To my lawyer. Let me pause and ask you, have you ever been underestimated so completely that it became your greatest weapon? That was me. Claire thought I would roll over, keep the peace, pay for her freedom with my silence. She had forgotten who she married. I was never the loud man in the room. I was the one who noticed everything. Who remembered every receipt. Who built systems that didn't collapse. I didn't need to burn the house down. I just needed to pull out the blueprint she never knew existed. That weekend, she hosted a small gathering, 6 of her wellness friends, all of them dressed in white, sipping kombucha, speaking about alignment and soul release. I was in the kitchen, refilling a tray of sparkling water, when I heard her laugh. Yeah, the money's sorted, she said. It's basically mine anyway. He'd never fight me on it. Laughter. Someone murmured, you're lucky he's so passive. Another chuckled, passive men make the best exits. I set the tray down quietly, walked outside, and texted my lawyer. Let's proceed. Send everything Monday morning. Then I sat on a bench facing the lake. That's when I realized, they were laughing at a man who no longer existed. And soon, Claire would realize that too. Monday came. 9:43 a.m. Claire received the packet by courier. Inside, the trust documentation, the asset separation, her unauthorized transfer request with timestamps and IP logs, all legal, all irrefutable. On top, clipped with a paperclip, a single handwritten note from me. The money isn't yours. It never was. But the mirror is. Take a long look. That afternoon, she did not speak to me. But I heard her behind the bedroom door. Pacing. Making calls. Then silence. And here is the thing about Claire, you have to understand this. She hated silence. She filled every space with noise. Yoga mats unrolled at dawn. Smoothies blending at 6 a.m., retreat leader Zooms echoing in the living room. But after that envelope arrived, the house went still. No smoothies. No music. No mantras. Just the soft shuffle of someone realizing the chessboard didn't look the way she thought it did. She didn't ask me about the documents, not at first. She played it cool. Claire always did. The first crack came 3 days later, over breakfast. She stirred granola into her yogurt and asked, almost casually. Why did the bank block my transfer? It flagged it as unauthorized. I was just moving our money. Her tone wasn't angry. It was inquisitive, almost maternal. I looked at her spoon, paused midair, and said just one thing. It wasn't our money. She blinked. That was the first time I saw her confidence falter. And for Claire, built entirely on image and impressions, faltering was the one thing she never planned for. Hook at the end. But she wasn't done playing. Not yet. The next move she made was the one that showed me just how desperate she was willing to get. The first thread was money. She went to her bank, her lawyer, her so-called financial wellness coach, whoever that really was, asking the same questions over and over. Why was I locked out of the funds? Why didn't the transfer go through? Can the trust be reversed? The answers were simple. No. No. And absolutely not. Because I planned for this. Because I knew who she was before she ever admitted it out loud. Flashback, 1 year earlier. Claire came home from her book club, lipstick too perfect for just wine and words. She tossed her purse onto the couch and, half smiling, said, "You know, if anything ever happened to you, I'd probably move to Costa Rica." She said it like a joke. But the way her smile lingered told me she had already tried that thought on for size. That night, I called Rita, my financial advisor of more than 15 years. "Let's start planning," I told her. She didn't ask why. She'd met Claire once. That was enough. Back to the present. By day 5, Claire must have realized the financial doors had closed. But she hadn't braced for the second blow. The non-profit board she just joined, the social wellness collective she bragged about, called her politely to inform her that her name had been removed from the gala sponsor list. Why? Because I had pulled the $25,000 donation she'd claimed we gifted together. It wasn't hers to give. I redirected the funds to a local nurse scholarship in Joanna's name. Claire called me, furious. "You embarrassed me," she hissed. "Do you realize how that made me look?" I replied calmly, like someone who gives away what doesn't belong to them. That was the second thread. Reputation. And when people like Claire start to unravel, they don't collapse all at once. They fray. Piece by piece. Ego, image, finances, control, future. She was fraying fast. She started cleaning compulsively, reorganizing cabinets, deleting photos off her phone as if she could erase consequences, too. She called her sister twice in one day. Then an old colleague. Then a financial planner she hadn't spoken to in years. And when all else failed, she came back to me. "I made a mistake," she said one night, sitting beside me. Her voice soft, rehearsed. She wasn't crying. Claire never cried. I panicked. I thought we were growing apart, and I just wanted to secure something for myself. I nodded. "That's exactly what you did." Her face changed. She expected forgiveness. Maybe a bargain. But I wasn't there to negotiate. I had already made peace with her absence. And to those of you watching this, maybe you think I was too calm. That I should have shouted, slammed a door, thrown something. But that's not who Claire was. She wasn't a storm. She was the slow leak in a roof. The kind that rots wood over years until the whole thing caves in. Her betrayal wasn't loud. It was steady. Quiet rewrites of who I was in her mind, the passive husband, the easy mark, the placeholder. What she didn't count on was that I had quietly built a version of myself she never bothered to see. That Friday, she packed a bag. Not all her things, just enough to stage drama without finality. She left a note on the counter. "I need space to think. This isn't what I wanted." I read it once, folded it, and placed it in the box with the others, the anniversary card she half wrote, the joint goals, lists that were always hers, the sticky note that once read, "Can you Venmo my friend for brunch?" Even her requests came with entitlement. Now all she had left was time. And I wasn't giving her mine anymore. She didn't come home that weekend. She stayed downtown with one of those women she used to call spiritually toxic, back when her image still mattered. Now she was the one in exile, scrambling. Monday morning, the next thread snapped. An envelope arrived on my doorstep. Certified mail. Legal letterhead. Claire had hired a lawyer. The letter used words like commingled assets, marital property, equitable distribution. In other words, she was trying to claw her way back into something she had already tried to steal. She wanted a meeting. She wanted negotiation. She wanted, in her lawyer's words, what she's entitled to. So I did the one thing that would have shocked her most. I agreed. We met at a small law office on the edge of town, a firm I had used before, back when I updated Joanna's trust. Claire walked in wearing white. Of course she did. Her hair was straight, not a strand out of place. Makeup? Barely there, but sharp enough to look deliberate. The perfume was so light you could almost miss it, but I knew better. That scent was never an accident, it was control. She walked in without Eve. "Thank you for coming," her lawyer started. "We think there has been some confusion about the money in question. Under California law, marital property, even inheritance, can be considered community property if." I raised my hand, calm but firm. "My lawyer will handle that," I said. And he did. Turns out Claire's assumptions had holes big enough to drive a truck through. "Sure. My law." Claire's face tightened. "Core." And then came BLO. My. But I was. "Once it clears, we W." Claire's head snapped up. H. I looked A. Here I. Outside. I nodded. I did not fight. I planned A. She scoffed, bitter. I gave yo. She walked to her car, still wearing white, but this time she looked small in it. Like a piece on a chessboard that had lost its moves. I did not watch her drive away. I turned and walked in the op. And then there was Daniel. Linen shirts, perfect teeth, drinks his coffee black but orders it like it is theater. That was the man in the blurry balcony photo. The so-called soulmate from her retreat. The man she left everything for. What she did not know, what he did not know, was that Daniel had made the same mistake she had. He underestimated the quiet man in the corner. After the legal meeting, Claire went silent for 2 weeks. No calls. No texts. No emails. But Daniel? He reached out. He was not supposed to have my email, but I had seen his name before in our shared iCloud. Claire never turned off syncing. And there it was. He is not going to let this go, is he? What do we do if the trust is real? I thought you said he never checked the accounts. Then one line made me pause. The lawyer I know said if this is fraud, we both might be in trouble. Your name was used to transfer funds. That line was gold. Proof. It meant Daniel was not just her side romance, he was her partner in crime. So I did something simple. I printed that email, highlighted that single line, and gave it to my lawyer along with the full iCloud trail. We did not press charges. Not yet. Instead, we mailed out 2 certified letters. One to Claire. One to Daniel. 2 signatures required. And 2 people who finally realized I was not the man they thought I was. Claire. You're dragging him into. No, I answered. You drag. He did nothing. Yo. Silence. Then, not words. You're only doing. No, I said. I am doing this to PR. That is when Daniel called. Yes, H. Hey, least. I let him talk. He stumbled through. When he finished, I asked one question. Would you be willing to put that in writing for the court? Click. He hung up. And that was the turning point. Claire, cornered and bleeding trust from both sides, tried one last play. She suggested a quiet settlement. No lawyers. No press. No damage to reputations. But reputation was never what I cared about. What mattered was principle. What mattered was the legacy of a woman, my aunt, who worked herself to the bone so I could have a future. And the woman I married tried to use that as leverage. So no. She could keep Daniel, her retreats, her crystals. But she would not take my dignity with her. A week later, Karma walked in wearing a different face. Daniel was served, not by me, but by his ex-wife. Turns out, he had never finalized his own divorce. The money he bragged about, it was frozen under her claim. Claire had gone all in on a man with less than nothing. They say karma does not knock. It rings the bell and waits on the porch. But here is the twist. That balcony photo Claire sent, the one of her and Daniel, I had it printed, framed, and mailed back to her. On the back, I wrote one line. Thank you. You gave me everything I needed. Because without her betrayal, I never would have woken up. To those of you listening, this was never just about money. This was about reclaiming clarity. Quiet power. The right to not be erased. There is a myth that men grow weaker with age. But here is what I have learned, we do not get weaker. We get quieter. And the quiet ones, we are the ones you should never underestimate. I never planned to involve my aunt. She had passed 2 years earlier. I had handled her affairs quietly, the way she would have wanted. She was not a woman of many words, but she left journals, letters. One envelope had my name written in her neat, careful handwriting. On the front, she wrote, "For when you finally see people clearly." I opened it the week after Claire left. Inside was not just love or advice, but instruction. My aunt had always known Claire was ambitious. She never accused her, never interfered, but she saw. In her will, she left me the inheritance in trust. And she authorized a secondary letter, to be sent if anyone tried to reach into that trust through lies. She wrote it herself, blunt, cold, devastating. I had it notarized and mailed to Claire's lawyer. Claire never saw it coming. Not because of the words, but because of the signatures. My aunt. And her attorney. A man who knew the trust better than anyone. One paragraph cut deeper than anything I could have said. Any attempt to seize this trust through coercion, deception, or bad faith will trigger protection under Section 38 of the agreement. You are not entitled. You were never entitled. Any further action will be treated as direct harm to the beneficiary. That was the day Claire stopped bluffing. She did not call. She did not write. 2 days later, her attorney filed for withdrawal. She was alone. And then the unexpected happened. The phone rang. It was Rebecca, Claire's sister. We had not spoken in years. She was the grounded one, a teacher in port. Can we talk? She asked. Not about Claire. About you. I hesitated. Then said yes. That weekend we met at a small diner just outside town. She slid a package across the table. Wrapped in brown paper, no label. I found this at my parents' house, she said. Claire dropped it off years ago and never mentioned it. I think you should see it. Inside were handwritten pages. Claire's journals. These journals were not the kind you expect. Not, "I'm healing through moonlight and essential oils," nonsense. No. These were blueprints. Calculations. Dates. Amounts. Notes like, "If I can get him to sell before next spring, I can move half without alert. Daniel says the house is undervalued. Need appraisal after separation. Suggest couples therapy, then stall. That gives time to move funds." Rebecca looked at me, face pale. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I always thought she loved you." "I'm sorry." I told her the truth. She did love me, in her own way. But somewhere along the line, she loved herself more. Those pages became evidence. Not for trial. Not for revenge. For clarity. Because once I pieced it together, it was obvious, this was not about Daniel. It was not even about love. It was extraction. Claire had treated our marriage like an investment. And when the return stopped thrilling her, she tried to cash out and walk away with the profit. But what she never understood is that I was not a stock. I was the foundation. And she had tried to burn the house down from the inside. I kept the journals. Did not leak them. Did not threaten her. Just filed them away, like an insurance policy and a mirror. Weeks passed. I slipped back into my own rhythm, morning coffee by the window, Sunday hikes, quiet nights with a book and silence for company. And then came a letter. Not from Claire. From her mother. Shaky handwriting, pink stationery. I do not know what she has done. I only know she is not the daughter I raised. You were good to her. I see that now. I hope you find peace. E.T. No return address. Just initials. Even her own mother had turned away. By the end of that month, there were no court dates, no screaming matches, no drawn-out battles. Just me, still standing, with everything intact. My trust. My home. My dignity. Claire was left with a lover drowning in debt, a trail of betrayal she could not hide, and a mirror she did not dare look into. And for those of you listening, remember this, do not underestimate a quiet man. Sometimes the sharpest revenge is no revenge at all. It is simply truth walking into the room and flipping on the lights. What amazed me most was how quiet the world gets when someone loses control. After her lawyer quit, after Rebecca gave me the journals, after even her mother wrote that apology, I thought I had heard the last of it. For 3 weeks, nothing but silence. Then an envelope came. Not from Claire. From a realtor's office. Polished, professional. Subject line, scheduled sale of joint property, final notice. I frowned. There was only one property we had ever technically co-owned, the cabin 2 hours north, tucked in the forest near Lake Hammond. That place was more memory than asset. We had bought it early in our marriage, back when things still felt like possibility. Winters by the fire. Board games. Mornings where the lake mist looked holy. Claire had stopped going after year 8. Called it too rustic. But me? I never missed a season. Now, apparently, she was trying to auction it off. I called the number. A polite young agent answered. Mr. Brooks, she said, the co-owner authorized an expedited sale. We were told you agreed to this. I haven't, I said flatly. Silence. Then a hesitant, oh. She provided a signed consent. Send me a copy. 2 hours later, it hit my inbox. It was my signature. Or close enough to fool someone not paying attention. But I knew better. The angle on the L in Leon was wrong. The S in Samuel looked traced. Claire had forged my consent. Not to take money this time. To take the last place that still meant something. I did not rage. I did not drive to her door. Instead, I drove to the cabin. Took the back roads. Stopped at the old bakery, got the same coffee I always did. When I got there, the air smelled like pine and earth and history. Everything was as I remembered. The canoe we never used. The book with her name scribbled in the margins. The spare key under the third stone on the steps. But I had brought something new, the file. Copies of the deed. Updated 3 years earlier. Because in year 10 of our marriage, I had quietly bought out her half using funds from a private account my aunt helped me set up. We had signed the paperwork at a notary. Routine. Forgettable. And Claire, as usual, had been too distracted by her next retreat to bother reading the fine print. She thought she still owned the cabin. She was wrong. I faxed the updated deed to the realtor with a note, the only authorized seller of this property is Leon S. Brooks. Any attempt to proceed without proper title clearance will result in legal action. The auction was cancelled. But I was not finished. That Monday morning, I drove straight from the mountains to my attorney's office. I laid it all out, the forged signature, the fake consent form, the attempt to liquidate property she did not even own. He leaned back in his chair and asked, "You want to press charges?" I thought about it for a long second, then shook my head. No. I want a cease and desist order. And I want her to feel it. We filed the paperwork that same morning. Within 2 days, Claire was staring at a formal warning, not from me, but from the State Bar Association's compliance officer. Forgery was not just unethical, it was criminal. And now she was under investigation. The next time I heard her voice, it was a voicemail. A rushed whisper, stripped of confidence. I didn't mean to. I thought I was entitled to something. You think you're better than me now, Leon? Is that it? I never called back. I did not have to. The system was answering for me. Here is the truth about people like Claire, they never respect boundaries until those boundaries become walls they cannot climb. She had spent years thinking charm could erase consequences. Believed that unhappiness was a free pass to betrayal. What she never counted on was that I had prepared long before she ever booked her first retreat. And to the men listening right now, sometimes the best way to win is not to chase the thief. It is to own the vault before they ever show up. I was slicing oranges in the kitchen one evening when the phone rang. Unknown number. Out of habit, I almost let it go to voicemail. But I picked up. Mr. Brooks? The voice was low, hesitant. Familiar, but not right away. It was Daniel. Claire's so-called retreat companion. The man in the balcony photo with the wine glass and the fake smile. I said nothing, just let him talk. I wasn't going to call, he stammered. But I think you should know what's going on. Claire told me you were fine with the money. Said it was mutual. But last week, she tried to get me to sign over power of attorney. She wanted me to move your inheritance into some crypto startup. Said it was temporary, just on paper. That you'd never find out. He rushed the words like a man about to confess at the gallows. I didn't sign. Something felt wrong. And today, I saw an email on her laptop. From the Bar Association. About an investigation. Look, man, I swear I didn't know. I thought she was just lost. But she's not who I thought she was. His voice cracked. Shame, panic, maybe both. That made 2 of us. But only one of us had married her. Finally, I asked, why are you telling me this? Silence, then a brittle reply. Because I think she's planning to disappear. She mentioned B-I-S-E, something about a contact with dual citizenship. Said she had an exit plan. She's been pulling cash in chunks. I don't know how much. You deserve to know. I thanked him calmly. Told him I appreciated the honesty. He asked if I was going to do something. I said, I already have. Because what Daniel did not know, and Claire sure as hell never figured out, was that my inheritance was not just protected. It was insured, monitored, tracked. 2 months before she packed her bags for that retreat, I had already moved the funds into a tiered portfolio with fraud protection, daily alerts, and forensic accounting oversight. I had also created a revocable living trust that gave me total legal authority. Which meant every single time Claire tried to touch those funds, it left a trail, a flag, an audit, a receipt. And that little crypto scam? It was the nail in her coffin. Because the startup she tried to funnel money into was already sitting on a federal watch list for international laundering. That forged signature, that fake consent, she thought was clever. Now it had context. The next letter I received was not from Claire. It was from the Department of Financial Protection and Innovation. They thanked me for the documentation, told me her actions were being escalated for review. I did not smile. Not yet. But for the first time in a long while, something inside me finally settled. The kind of quiet I carry now doesn't come from revenge. It comes from alignment. Here's the twist Daniel never saw coming. He thought he was warning me like a man who'd boarded the wrong train. But I wasn't on the tracks anymore. I was in the control tower. And to the men watching this, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. But when they try to erase your history, make sure they never realize what you've already written in invisible ink. It was a Tuesday morning, gray skies pressed low, the kind of day where coffee tastes stronger. I was trimming hedges in front of the house when the phone rang. Claire's number. 12 missed calls in the past week, all ignored. But this time, I picked up. Hello. A pause. Then her voice, soft, cracked around the edges. Why didn't you tell me? I said nothing. You knew, the whole time, didn't you? Still silence. Her breath hitched. They've frozen my accounts. All of them. I got a letter from the Treasury Department. A subpoena. Daniel left. Took his things. Disappeared. I waited. I don't understand, she whispered. How did you know? That's when I finally spoke. Claire, you emailed me. Remember? That picture of you and him, wine in hand, sunset behind you. I printed it. Framed it. Kept it in my office. What? She gasped. That photo was the last piece I needed. Proof of intent. The timestamp, the metadata, your own words. It tied everything together. Her breath caught. You set me up. No, I said quietly. You set yourself up. I just stopped getting in the way. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't curse. Didn't even sound angry. I simply told her the truth. That the trust, the safeguards, the legal team had flagged every move before she even pressed send. That by the time she thought she'd moved the money, I'd already moved the goalposts. And that the inheritance had never been hers to begin with. You're punishing me, she whispered. No. I'm letting you face what you chose. I was scared, she said. I thought you'd hoard everything. I wanted to start over. You did start over, I said. Just not the way you planned. Her voice trembled. They're saying I could face charges, financial misconduct, fraud. I don't want to go to prison. Please, just talk to them. Tell them it was a mistake. A misunderstanding. I stood still, hedge clippers in hand. Claire, if I do that, if I intervene, who speaks for the woman who worked 30 years as a nurse so I could have a future? Who speaks for the boy she raised after my parents died? The one who promised her he'd protect her gift. Her silence told me everything. I ended the call. Haven't heard from her since. 2 months later, the final paperwork arrived. Her claims of joint ownership were officially rejected. My living trust held firm. Her accounts remained frozen. The crypto startup dissolved under investigation. And Daniel, last I heard, left the country with none of the money she'd promised him. There's a bench outside my aunt's old house. Some evenings, after the sun dips behind the hills, I sit there and think about the quiet ways life teaches us who people really are. Thank you for walking this road with me. If you've ever been betrayed quietly, if you've ever watched someone try to walk away with what was yours, I hope this story reminded you, dignity can be reclaimed. Drop your city in the comments. Like this video if you've ever healed in silence. Subscribe, because the next story might be yours. And remember, the calmest man in the room is usually the one who's already won.